Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 7 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2023 fantasy football season. We're going to be going in depth through every single game from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football. I'll be telling you guys what I think you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those matchups. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 7 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the New Orleans Saints. Now, right now, the health of Trevor Lawrence is pretty up in the air. Now, obviously, the injury doesn't appear to be catastrophic. It doesn't appear that Trevor Lawrence, if he was to miss this game, would be missing 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season. But since the game is on Thursday night, there is still a chance that Trevor Lawrence does end up missing. But what I will tell you is even with CJ Beathard under center, I feel like Ingram will get enough targets to be just fine. He has had 5 straight weeks of over 7 targets. He has also been one of the safest tight ends in fantasy football this season, pretty much being a top 8 tight end in every single game except for that game up against the Bills in London. Obviously, will Evan Ingram be hurt by the fact that Trevor Lawrence is not there? 100%, but even if Beathard is under center, again, I think there will be enough targets for Evan Ingram to have a good enough game to, at the end of the day, be worthy of a start. In terms of the New Orleans Saints, they've got Taysom Hill and Foster. Now, Taysom Hill had finally had that good game that we've been talking about all year long up against the Texans in Houston. Now that it has happened, though, it feels like we are weeks away from it potentially happening again. I don't think you can trust Taysom Hill one bit. Foster Moreau, I don't think Juwan Johnson will be back yet again, so that will lead to Foster Moreau being the quote-unquote tight end 1 on the team, even though we're going to see a bunch of Taysom Hill as well. Foster Moreau has, interestingly enough, been a top 18 tight end in back-to-back weeks, but if you follow his targets in those games, it's pretty clear that he is very unlikely to repeat that. The one game where he played pretty decently, he barely had any targets, and he fell ass backwards into the end zone. The other week, he had just 4 targets, so it really doesn't seem like Foster Moreau, despite his recent success, is a guy that you want to be putting into your lineup. Next up, we move to the Sunday slate, the Las Vegas Raiders at the Chicago Bears. Now, Cole Kmet definitely had a down game last week. Prior to that, he was a top 9 tight end in back-to-back weeks. Without Justin Fields, the floor feels significantly low. Apple bottom jeans, really low for Cole Kmet. But like I have said all week, I feel as though Bagnett is going to feed this man the ball so much that up against a pretty meh Raiders defense, Kmet will be fine. But obviously, it doesn't feel very comfortable throwing Cole Kmet into your lineup like it did last week, knowing that Justin Fields is not going to be playing. For the Raiders, this is a situation where the quarterback is very much in the air. I don't think it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo, and I ultimately feel like they're going to lean with Aiden O'Connell as the starting quarterback, so it'll be rookie versus rookie at the quarterback position here in Las Vegas. Michael Mayer, or in Chicago, with Michael Mayer for the Raiders, tight end 5 last week, and you can argue that Mayer could start over some of the tight ends that I will talk about in this video. With all of the uncertainty at the quarterback position, though, I ultimately feel as though you should bench him once Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Pornstar, Jimmy G-Spot comes back, though. I think Mayer has the upside to be started weekly, especially since he has gotten a huge increase in snaps over the last couple of weeks compared to the start of the season. Because at the start of the season, he was legitimately nowhere to be found. Next up, we move to the Cleveland Browns at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Kylen Granson did have his first good game last week since week number 2. Week 1, week 2, Kylen Granson was on fucking fire, NBA Jam style. But after that, he was ice cold. But last week, he showed back up. But ultimately, I don't really want to start Gardner Minshew's tight end number 1 in a tough matchup up against the Cleveland Browns defense. And this man might not even play because he's in the concussion protocol. If he does not play, then we'll be seeing Ogletree or my main man, Mo Money, Mo Alley Cox as the tight end one. So Kylen Granson or any of the Colts tight ends that end up potentially being the starter would be a sit for me up against this stout, maybe even the best defense in the NFL. David Njoku has been playing better over the last 2 weeks without Deshaun Watson. So that does earn him a start. I think Watson will be back this week, and that should help Njoku, but the stats tell you that Njoku was actually better without Watson, which puts my brain into a mental pretzel. If he shits the bed here and then does it one more time, he's a guy that's getting dropped like it's hot, like a Snoop Dogg song. So David Njoku's kind of on a fucking tightrope here, and he's about to fall into the Niagara Falls. You could definitely argue for starting Michael Mayer over David Njoku. Next up, we move to the no one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Now, Henry came out of the gates, just like Kylen Granson, scorching hot. But ever since week 3, Hunter Henry has been ice cold like Kevin Hart in the ice tub that he does on that show. If you've never seen it, I think it's called like Cold as Balls or something, right? Freezing cold has been Hunter Henry recently. This offense is just the definition of limp dick. If you Google limp dick and you scroll past all the other pictures, you'll see a picture of Mac Jones sitting there looking all sad on the sidelines. This Patriots offense cannot get it up. This Patriots offense is going to struggle, even with a Bills defense that is severely injured. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox are both going to be sits for me. Now, one of these days, Dawson Knox one time, if you're with me, or Dalton Kincaid are going to go absolutely fucking ballistic in a game. And there's going to be people in the comment section, Nick, I told you so. Dalton Kincaid, I told you he was going to have a good game, Nick. I told you Dawson Knox was going to play good. But you will never actually know when to start him, because the team uses both of them pretty much equally, and with how much they are just forcing the rock down Stephon Diggs' throat, there's not enough volume to go around here when you're using 2 tight ends. There just simply isn't. Gabe Davis has also been scoring a shit ton of touchdowns outside of last week against the Giants. So it really feels like Kincaid and Knox are iced out of production. Sometimes it takes a while for these rookies to start, flaring up, having great games. So maybe that's the case with Kincaid, but right now he is best left on your bench. And ultimately, in most leagues, I think he should be on the waiver wire. Next up, we got the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the New York Football Giants, going from an AFC East matchup to an NFC East matchup. Logan Thomas had his first real down game of the season last week up against the hot Atlanta Falcons. Now, I'm not going to panic. That's not Mayday, wee woo, right? There's no need to panic. I feel like this Commanders offense is going to look mighty fine this week against the Giants on Sunday. Now, when these two teams play, normally the game goes under, the game goes down like Junior Soprano, but ultimately here, I think that Logan Thomas is still going to be start-worthy. I think Sam Howell's going to play great. And again, with the numbers that Logan Thomas has put up this season, you can't just jump fucking ship, right, after one down game. Darren Waller had a decent showing last week up against the Buffalo Bills with 5 receptions on 7 targets for 43 yards. Now, it seems like this offense is better off with Tyrod instead of Daniel Jones, but if we're being honest with you, do we really think that Tyrod's going to pick it up, right, and have 2 solid games in a row? I'm not sure. Besides Saquon, Waller is the only player that I remotely trust on this offense. I like Wan'Dale Robinson, but he is so much at the mercy of Tyrod Taylor that it really scares me. Like, if Tyrod misses, it seems like Waller could just grab it anyways because he's that great of a tight end. Probably could have scored a touchdown last week if, the refs would actually call fucking penalties in the end zone against the Bills, but they don't do that. We all know that. So Darren Waller should be fine. Obviously, pretty boomer bust weekly, but I think up against the Commanders D, he will get it done. Next up, we move to the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, crazy enough, I like both of the Atlanta Falcons tight ends, and we've been talking about this now for 2 weeks in a row. Kyle Pitts has been a top 8 tight end in back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 weeks. While that does not necessarily make me feel super confident, and while I still feel a little bit queasy when I throw Kyle Pitts into my lineup, and I am kind of worried about the matchup up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Sir Mix-a-Lot, when Kyle Pitts was down astronomical, when he was down in the gutter, I was still starting him because of how skilled he is. So, even though I'm not too sure if he'll be able to pick it up, and I don't really trust Arthur Smith's dumbass, I still think that you gotta be firing up Monsieur Kyle Pitts. Jonnu Smith has been a top 12 tight end in 3 straight games. Call me crazy, but I honestly think Jonnu Smith at this point in the season feels safer than Kyle Pitts, even though Kyle Pitts is like this superhuman, this alien level tight end, right? Jonnu Smith isn't that. But Desmond Ridder, Arthur Smith, they just love Jonnu Smith. So outside of week 1, Jonnu Smith has been a top 18 tight end every single week. He has been very reliable, like wrapping a condom, a Trojan around your fantasy football squad. So if push came to shove, I had to start one. I'd definitely rather start Kyle Pitts because I think the upside's higher, but Jonnu definitely feels like the safer bet. For the Buccaneers, I say this every single fucking week about Cade Otton. If this man, you just picked him up Toy Story style, the claw, and transported him onto some other team without Evans, Godwin, Rashad with 2 A's White, right? Without a team that's kind of null with talent, then Cade Otton would probably be a must-start tight end weekly. But you never know which games the targets are coming because there's so much competition around him that you can't really start him. Next up, we move to a very interesting matchup, the Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens. The Lions are coming off of an absolute heater of a matchup where they shit-kicked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Ravens coming off of a W against the Titans, but it didn't really feel like they did it in dominant fashion. It kind of still feels like the Ravens offense is in a bit of a lull. With that said, though, Mark Andrews has been a top 12 tight end in 3 straight games, and besides Zay Flowers, Andrews appears to be the only man on this team that can actually catch the goddamn pigskin. Sam Laporta played through a calf injury last week, and I definitely think that it did impact his play. He is still limited in practice today on Wednesday with that calf injury. Even though he is banged up, you still have to start him every week. This motherfucker, while banged up, had 11 targets against the Bucs last week. And even though he didn't do much with it, I still think you got to continue to ride the Sam Laporta Express. He has been uber safe all season long, and even though the Ravens defense obviously isn't some cupcake, soft serve, soft as baby shit matchup, I still think Sam Laporta, even banged up, needs to be in your lineup. But I think once he gets past this calf injury, he is going to be back on the saddle like his name was Arthur Morgan as a top 5 tight end weekly. We might still have to rank him that highly because he's that good, but I don't feel as confident this week, obviously, in saying that. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, these are 2 tight ends that are just holding on for dear life. Like when in 22 Jump Street, when we saw Jonah Hill as well as the other guy, Magic Mike, whose name is escaping me, got so many chains, they call me Channing Tatum. They do. Shout out Drake. Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill, they're hanging on to the helicopter in Mexico, and, you know, we saw what happens, that he falls, and then Jonah Smith has to catch him. Channing Tatum's like hanging on. He has to grab Jonah Hill's nuts to grab the grenade out there to blow up the bad guys, right? And they're hanging on for dear life, right? That's what Freiermuth and Higbee have. That would have made so much more sense if I remembered what Channing Tatum's name was instantly. And I know the comments are going to be like, Nick, how do you know that Channing Tatum's Magic Mike? It's because I watch it every night before I go to sleep, baby. So Pat Freiermuth got me all disheveled thinking about Channing Tatum and Magic Mike. Hopefully, anyone listening on podcast, I just winked like a million times because it's a joke. I only watch it once a week. So Pat Freiermuth is looking to return coming out of the bye week after suffering a hamstring injury. This whole Steelers offense is looking rough. It is a rough squad. And they're tough to read weekly, in my opinion. He is very much on the fringe, like I've been saying, of being start-worthy. I am hoping that this offense gets kind of jump-started coming out the bye week. They could be more reliable, but with Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator, that hope is most likely not coming to fruition. Tyler Higbee has been on a downward spiral straight through the depths of the earth. And that's because Kupp is back. If he shits the bed again, I think we're going to have to start looking elsewhere at the tight end position. Now, I think Kupp being there adds to the touchdown upside of Higbee, but it so much takes away from the targets. But knowing that the running backs are all banged up, right, that they're going to just be rolling out XFL legends out there, you would have to think that maybe that helps out Higbee just a little bit. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. But before we break down this game at the tight end position, as well as the final last couple of games here till we get to Monday Night Football, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play NFL Pick'em in the whole entire universe. And Underdog has a great offer for you guys today. But first, I want to explain how Underdog's Pick'em works. So you're going to need to select at least 2 players from 2 different teams. So we're going to start with Thursday Night Football, Jags at Saints. We're going to go with Travis Etienne higher than 65.5 rushing yards. Travis Etienne has been on fire. Now, there aren't a lot of choices out just yet because I'm recording this on Monday night after the Cowboys-Chargers game. There will be more offerings as the week goes on, and we're going to match that with our other pick here of Jared Goff higher than 241.5 passing yards on Sunday up against the Ravens defense. If both of these hit, it will pay out 3 times your entry fee. If you do 3 different picks, it's 6 times your entry fee. 4 picks is 10 times, and 5 picks is 20 times. Obviously, all of your picks need to hit for it to pay out. If you are new to Underdog Fantasy and live in one of these states listed on your screen right now, use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. If you deposit $100, they give you an additional $100, $50 additional $50, $25 additional $25. The minimum deposit on Underdog Fantasy is $10, and if you have a gambling problem, please make sure that you call 1-800-GAMBLER. Back on into things here, we got the Cardinals at the Seahawks. So the Seahawks are a classic team that doesn't use running back by committee because it's Kenneth Walker season, so Kenneth Walker III. They use tight end by committee, baby. 3 tight ends. They use Fant, Parkinson, and Will Dissly. So while Fant is the best out of the 3, and while Fant has shown us some flashes at the NFL level, you can't trust him when you use 3 tight ends. So that's just pretty simple. Zach Ertz has had 2 down games in a row, as it appears that we are going to be seeing more Trey McBride, which actually makes a lot of sense, but does suck for Zach Ertz, obviously, with where they drafted McBride last year and how highly a lot of people are getting down on their knees, given the Gawk 9,000 special to McBride. It's good to see that he's playing well, but again, it does suck if you have Zach Ertz. This leads to Ertz being kind of ranked in that gross zone of tight ends 13 through 18. He's in the range of guys like Higbee, guys like Freiermuth, right? Njoku, who it's just like, do I really want to start him? But I definitely feel a little bit more confident in Ertz than those other guys. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers, the Cheeseheads, at the Denver Broncos in Mile High. Greg Dulcich appears to be getting placed on the IR again, which will lead to Troutman being the tight end number 1. With that said, he doesn't get enough receiving work to be worthy of a start. Crazy enough, Greg Dulcich is hurt off the rip of the season. He comes back, and it's like that Simpsons meme where I don't know too much about the Simpsons, the grandfather, whatever the hell his name is, like he takes his hat off, puts it on like the coat rack, puts his coat down in the bar, and then walks right back out, right? Like he walks in, puts it down, puts it back on, and leaves. That's what Greg Dulcich did. He was there, he was in, he was out very quickly, and he's back out again. It is kind of sad to see, but again, Adam Troutman, the fish man, is not worthy of a start. Luke Musgrave is a nerd's wet dream, right? An analytical wet dream with a 72.7% route rate. He has a 17.6% target share and 1.56 yards per route run. Now we just have to wait for those analytics, the spreadsheets, to play out on the NFL. Nick, the spreadsheet, this is why we don't look at stats too much, because analytics don't necessarily mean that a player is going to perform in a big way. I agree with that, right? We need those percentage points. We need what he's been doing on the spreadsheets, a freak in the spreadsheets, to actually start working for his game. Now, he hasn't been shit this season. He's been solid, but I think this is the game where he might Hulk smash here up against a putrid Broncos D. That Broncos D has some schmegma. Next up, we got the LA Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs to close out the Sunday slate before we get to Sunday Night Football. Gerald Everett and Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce, we all know that we got to start him every single week. Mr. Swift has been a top 8 tight end every single week of the season. We don't have to talk about him. We don't have to suck him dry because we all know how great Travis Kelce is. Gerald Everett is pretty much a spot start every single week. Without Mike Williams, I'm willing to take a shot on him now. Early on in the season, it was kind of like, do you really want to start Everett with all of those weapons around him? But we all know deep down that Donald Parham is probably going to be the guy that ends up scoring a touchdown and ruining it all. Next up, we got my Dolphins at the Philadelphia Eagles, the matchup of the week, the game of the week, the main event of the evening. The almost undefeated Philadelphia Eagles going up against the almost undefeated Miami Dolphins in what should be the game of the week. I wish I could sound like the guy that does the boxing announcer buffer, but I can't. The only voice impression I can do is, my name is Borat, I like my wife, and it's not even that good anymore. I think my voice has changed over the last couple of years. Like 2 years ago, I basically sounded just like fucking Borat, right? But now I don't do it as well. Nick, you suck. I know. Durham Smythe, back-to-back weeks with one or fewer targets for the Dolphins. He does a solid job blocking, but we're playing in fantasy football. These are not point-per-block leagues. In that case, Durham Smythe would be pretty good. Dallas Goedert has had back-to-back weeks with 8 or more targets. The Dolphins' defense is pretty bad against the tight end. Even with Goedert being pretty up and down all season, it's not like you're going to sit the starting tight end who actually catches passes on one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL. I get they shit the bed against the Jets, but even then, Goddard looked fine. Final game here, Monday Night Football, 49ers at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. George Kittle, we talk about this every single week, so I might sound like a broken record at this point, but Kittle is the most boom or bust tight end in the NFL. His bad game is really bad. It sinks your team's metaphorical battleship, right? He might get as few as 2 or 3 points. But when he hits, it's out of the park. It's into the Coke sign at Giants Stadium, baby. And we're talking about the San Francisco Giants Stadium. If you know, you know. If you played Biggs, the video game where you could hit the ball at that shit and it would explode. It was awesome. If you know, you know. So, yeah, those games are huge, right? 20-plus points. Now, you have to start him every week because of that upside, right? He might be a guy that bends your team over the table without the use of lube a lot of weeks, but there's going to be games where he goes crazy, and he is single-handedly the reason why you win, so you got to start him. TJ Hawkinson still looked good last week despite the woes of the Vikings offense in Chicago. I get this matchup is definitely tough against the 49ers, but even if Hawkinson has a semi-down game, it would be hard to believe that his game was so down bad that he ended up fucking your team over so much that he just ruins your week, right? He's the reason why you lost. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. If you have any additional questions and you want a guaranteed answer, now you can ask your questions in the comments. If you want a guaranteed answer, make sure you guys check out the Patreon for $7.50, link in the video description. I also post my weekly rankings on there. Check out one of the videos on your screen right now. Have a great day, and as always, goodbye!